Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of VFX Futures. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters. Today I'm talking to Dylan Sisson from Pixar Animation Studios, where he works on the marketing side of RenderMan. Many people might already know Dylan because of his incredible artwork, his forays into 3D printing and VR, and also the fact that he's the creator and designer of the RenderMan Walking Teapot. Here, I talked to Dylan specifically about a short film he's made called Teapot Meets Potzilla. And you may have already guessed that's a take on the famous hand-animated black and white short film called Bambi Meets Godzilla. The point of Dylan's film is actually to showcase the use of RenderMan's stylized looks to get to that line art look. And you can, of course, see both films and more in the accompanying post at beforesandafters.com. Also, just before we jump into that chat with Dylan, make sure you also stick around towards the end of our conversation for a fun exploration of Dylan's experience with Midjourney and AI art. I don't think you want to miss that. It's actually a really interesting chat. So, let's jump into the conversation now with Pixar's Dylan Sisson. Hi Dylan, how's things?
Hey Ian, things are good, going well. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see and hear you. It feels like 27 years since we last spoke, but it might actually be almost a year.
It feels like 27 years for sure, at least. But yeah, I think it's just been a year since we talked over Zoom. It's been years since we talked in person, I think.
That's right. You and I
Yeah.
were really lucky for several years there where we always got to meet at Siggraph or Annecy or FMX at different places around the world. And luckily, that's kind of coming back again. We'll soon see each other at Siggraph in Vancouver.
This is true. This is true. Siggraph's going to be great, I think.
What are
We'll see.
what are you actually bringing to Siggraph and talking about at Siggraph?
Well, this year, in the RenderMan group, we usually come and show the latest stuff in RenderMan, and we usually have a RenderMan Art and Science Fair. So that's when we give away our swag. So we have some new swag this year that we'll be handing out, and we'll be delivering the latest features in the next release of RenderMan, which is 25. So we released the first edition of RenderMan 1989, and so now we're on version 25. And there's a number of things about that which I won't talk about until then,
Mm.
but some of the things we can talk about are some of the advancements in the stylized looks that we've been working on. So back in version 24, we released XPU, and we also released stylized looks. Those were kind of two of the tent poles of that release, and the stylized looks allow us to do basically non-photorealistic rendering in a physically based renderer. So we can take our RenderMan scene, 3D scene, and add lines to it, and hatching and watercolors and all that kind of good stuff. So that's kind of what we'll be showing.
Yeah. I've covered this a little bit in articles and at Befores and Afters, in that some of the bigger studios, it's been really fun seeing some of their NPR, work in big films, including Pixar in some recent features. But Dylan, also, I think to demo some of the stylized looks, you've gone and made like a fun short film, haven't you?
Yeah, I actually did. It's not on the same level as some of those other productions, but yeah, I made a short film all by myself called Teapot Meets Potzilla, and it's a parody or an homage to Bambi Meets Godzilla, which was released in 1969 by Marv Newland in his thesis, his academic thesis.
Yeah.
And it's just a super silly short. So I did a stylized treatment of that.
Yeah. So just to paint the picture, and everyone can go and watch these two shorts over at beforesandafters.com. But Bambi Meets Godzilla is like a black and white hand animated, as Dylan says, from 1969 by Marv Newland, short about Bambi sitting there eating some flowers until a big Godzilla foot stomps on him, on her, on
No,
him.
you gave away the ending. Yeah.
Oh, well, come on. I think I've watched that film a million times.
Spoiler alert. No, I think
we have to talk about
a lot of
that
people
bit,
know
though.
this one.
Yeah, a lot of people know that one. And, you know, all the while sweet music is playing, it's a really great little short that's literally like a minute and a half long.
And it's super funny. Like
Yeah.
I saw it as a kid. I must have been pretty impressionable. I was probably 8 years old when I saw it at the Portland Art Museum, and I just thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. I was 8 years old, so I hadn't seen that much stuff, but I thought it was hilarious. So for me to do a parody of that with stylized looks, it made me super happy just to kind of go back to the beginning because that's when I got into animation, started doing stop motion and stuff like that.
Yeah. So let me just spoil Teapot Meets Podzilla, but really you should go and watch it before hearing me talk about it. It's black and white. It's a teapot doing very similar things to Bambi until, well, a Godzilla foot stomps on it. But then also, I think the twist there, Dylan, is that it becomes green as well, and 3D in nature, I suppose. Dylan's face at me right now is, Ian, you really are spoiling it. But I told people to go and watch it first, Dylan.
It's a one note short, but yeah,
Yes.
no, you can't spoil it.
Yeah.
It's worth watching.
I think because we're on audio, I need to describe it for people. So that's the only reason I'm doing it. But I am super curious about ultimately how you used RenderMan and the stylized look stuff to do this.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The Potzilla foot that comes down and smashes the teapot. Just so everybody knows, that's actually a version of a teapot that we made for Monsters when that came out for Monsters University. So the one with the horns at the end, that guy is actually one of the previous teapots. So the twist at the end of Teapot Meets Potzilla is that it's actually another teapot.
Radio.
And kind of what you were talking about, or kind of to the point of your question, the short itself cuts between kind of the physically based rendering and the stylized rendering. So you're looking at something that looks like it's a drawing, and they'll cut away and you can see actually the geometry with the shaders on it, and then I'll cut back to the hand-drawn quality. And I basically did this short as sort of an experiment to kind of push line work and to see what kind of different lines I could make. What was interesting about Bambi Meets Godzilla and trying to emulate that style is that when you're trying to draw a line as a human from frame to frame, you try and draw it perfectly from frame to frame, but each frame is going to vary just a little bit. And that kind of wave in the line makes it feel hand-drawn. And it gives it that kind of quality that you get from, the kind of the low rent style of Bambi Meets Godzilla, just kind of the line work frame to frame. So I wanted to recreate that. So I used the tools in RenderMan to kind of push that sort of look. And I think we discussed stylized looks a little bit before, but you have your 3D scene and you're working in your DCC, whether that's Maya or Blender or Houdini or whatnot. And you can start adding different types of display filters, which will take different live AOVs from your scene and construct lines around the different signals that you send it, or different hatchings or whatnot. And that can all be done in real time or interactive time. So instead of doing your entire stylization in compositing, which, a lot of these big feature films that are using stylization are doing in compositing, this technique uses interactive rendering. So you can actually go in and, like, it's an IPR session, and do your live rendering, move your lights around and change your shaders and adjust it and get your composition straight. And so that gives you that immediate feedback, which is useful for being creative. And then if you want to composite it later, you can. But that's kind of the a big overview of the tool set. So it essentially allows me to take a scene that I have set up in Maya, flip a switch, and start rendering it with lines like it's a hand-drawn piece.
Yeah. I love the kind of in jokes in your short, which is in the Bambi Meets Godzilla, they thank the city of Tokyo. I mean, it's because it's Godzilla. Here you thank the state of Utah because of obviously the origins of the teapot, right, Dylan?
Oh, right. There's a lot of dumb jokes in the in the short. So yeah, Ed Catmull, he went to BYU. So did Martin Newell. He went to BYU, and Martin Newell modeled the first teapot based on his own kitchen teapot as a Melita teapot, and that became the Utah teapot as we know it. And yeah, so there's a couple jokes there. I think the wardrobe is by Catmull Clark or something like that, because it's a subdivision surface sort of joke. It just has some dumb jokes in there.
They're the best kind. But
yeah,
actually, it's also very much, from your point of view, an educative thing for people who want to try out the stylized looks in RenderMan. You tend to release, don't you, and they'll be coming, I assume, around Siggraph time, breakdowns and perhaps files and lessons that will help people, understand the line artwork that you've done here.
That's exactly right. One of the goals for this particular short was to see if we could achieve the wavy line work, which I did by some kind of clever wiring of shading networks, which I won't get into right now. But I essentially offset the noise so it would kind of wave instead of undulate. And the tutorials that I've put together kind of walk through the steps of like, hey, here's my 3D scene, here's my scene, I'm going to take it, I'm going to start putting lines on it, and here I'm going to add some things to make the lines wavy and add more character to the line. So it's sort of an introductory kind of onboarding to the whole stylized look system, because it's very flexible, so it's very powerful, but because it's very flexible, it's also kind of hard to kind of get started in. So we realize that there's a need for some good introductory material. So that's kind of how I started off on this idea. It's like, well, I could do some stylized lines on a teapot, and I was like, why don't I just do a short Bambi Meets Godzilla homage? So that's what I flipped that into. And then I had too much fun with it and went crazy, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah. So Dylan, when is your feature film, the extension of this or something else coming out? Is that at Siggraph time as well?
Yeah, we'll see how far we can push this story, but yeah, I guess there could be other teapots that keep stepping on him.
Yeah, could go anywhere.
Yeah, could go anywhere. Could be amazing. Would be amazing feature film.
Awesome. Well, everyone who's going to Siggraph in Vancouver, I recommend checking out what Pixar and RenderMan have got on show, which isn't just about RenderMan, by the way. Pixar always has some great talks and production sessions. There's some really, really good ones on Lightyear and Turning Red. I'm a sucker for the production sessions and talks, Dylan. I feel like I could go to Siggraph and just sit down for the 4 days and watch only those. And they obviously cover RenderMan, but also Pixar's been adopting, Houdini in big ways and developing proprietary and bespoke tools to do fur and cloth and other environments and things. So I really just wanted to give a shout out to those production sessions and talks that are happening.
Yeah, and USD. USD is a
USD.
big popular technology that we're hearing more and more about. So that's exciting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's so much great stuff that's happening at Siggraph. Um, it's going to be good to get back there in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The short film, Teapot Meets Podzilla, is obviously related to your work at RenderMan, but it's personal work. I noticed another piece of personal work that you'd been posting that I really wanted to ask you about, which
Okay.
are these beach scenes. Now, I feel like I almost don't want to give a spoiler about them, but basically it was like this. It's hard to even describe, Dylan. Alien-esque, ethereal things on beach landscapes that I am just going to tell you I thought were real when I first saw them. I honestly thought you might have gone out there with some of your 3D printing sculpts that you're also famous for and
Yeah.
plonked them on some beach. But that isn't what you did, Dylan, was
That's not exactly what happened. So just a little backstory. I was
it?
on the Oregon coast for a couple of weeks,
Mm.
staying at my aunt and uncle's beach house because we're having some construction here at home. So I was on the beach, minding my own business. I'd go out on the beach in the morning. I'd take pictures of um, of the beach. And one morning I found some eagles on the beach and took some pictures of them. And so I was posting all these beach pictures on Facebook. And then while I was at the beach, I got accepted to the beta of Midjourney. And I
Mm.
thought, well, maybe I'll do some AI art, AI generative art with Midjourney. And I thought, what should I do? I was like, maybe I should do something, make something on the beach. So I was like, just, you know, I don't know if you've used the AI software, but you just type in something like
Yeah.
strange artifact on beach. So I typed that in and I gave it a lens and a couple other things, but essentially that was it. And then I got these examples of like what looked like my beach photos with like these weird metal things on it. I was like, and the way that this works is that it'll generate a number of them and you pick kind of the ones that you want to iterate more on until you get something that looks cool. So I got some stuff. I was like, these look pretty good. I'm going to post them on Facebook. I'd be like, found some weird stuff this morning on the beach. So everybody already knew I was on the beach. And then I was like, and people are like, that's odd. What are those things? They're like, that looks like your art. I was like, well, now I have to do some more stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll make them slightly bigger. So I said, made the sculptures that look like instead of maybe a foot tall or
Mm.
whatever, maybe they're 6 feet tall. So I posted those, and people were like, "What is that? What do you
Yeah.
what did you make that stuff?" My uncle was texting me. He was like, "What did you make those sculptures? Where did you put them? Because this we're staying at his house."
Oh.
So he was like, "What are you doing at my house with these sculptures? Like what's going on?" And I tried to explain to him what I was doing, and then I was like, "Well, I kept posting more of these, and people were still kind of confused. Some
Mm.
people were like, knew what was going on, and then I was like, well, I'm just going to push it a little bit more." So I was like, broken spacecraft on beach. And so I had all these weird spacecrafts that were like kind of broken and on the beach, and I posted those to Facebook, and people are like, "What is going on?" And then it just there was finally just giant mechs walking off the coast and things like that. It got pretty fun at the end, but
Yeah.
people believed it for a little while.
Well, I'm going to say I was one of them right at the beginning of your postings, only because, Dylan, it isn't that far fetched that if you had a 4 week holiday and time to sculpt some things or 3D print things, it's not that far fetched that you would do it. No offense. So,
It's just entirely plausible.
yeah.
Like it started off as an entirely plausible premise.
But it is interesting. You were riding the wave of this AI art, you know, wave, which is still happening. But
Oh yeah,
it is fascinating right now, and I mean, I kind of love it because there's so much to talk about in terms of how that art might affect existing artists, 3D artists, 2D artists, concept artists, how it might end up being part of some of these films that I cover, and that even places like Pixar work on. I'm not suggesting that that's what you're doing or Pixar or RenderMan are doing, but it does feel like a whole new thing that I think will be a big conversation at Siggraph actually in the next few weeks.
Oh, it's going to be more and more interesting. I think things are just starting to get weird. Yeah, and if you look at Pixar films since Toy Story 4, we have a denoiser that we're using that was developed at Disney Research, which uses machine learning. It's an AI denoiser. And so if you see any of those films that we've made since Toy Story 4, all of those pixels are being processed with AI. Yep. And there's different tools being used for up-resing images with AI, in-betweening with AI. And I think this kind of ideation process that we're seeing with art is also something that we'll be seeing a lot more of as well, especially because it's Mid-Journey, you're just typing in a sentence. Like if you actually had some tools to make it useful, or you could generate like 3D geometry with these types of things, then you'd be getting into some really interesting spaces. So I'm really excited about it.
That's what I was absolutely wondering, was whether this is going further and you're being given any kind of meshes or rigs or anything like that in any new tools out of that generative text entry. I'm not sure if that's happening. It probably is on people's minds, but it would be pretty
I'm sure it's happening somewhere in a mountain in Nevada or something. But there's so much potential there for this technology to impact artists, and I think it's going to be in a good way. I mean, if you look at a lot of the people that are complaining about it now, or they're 3D artists, and maybe they're concerned about their jobs, but that's what they said when they invented the 3D artists. Like they displaced everything as well, and we're still, that's just how the cookie crumbles. But I feel like AI, especially this tools like Mid-Journey or Dolly, are sort of like the first flight of like the Wright brothers, right? So like this, it's pretty exciting, it's pretty cool, but you could kind of ding the Wright brothers on a couple things. They actually didn't go anywhere. They just went to the end of the runway.
Yeah.
And the in-flight service was terrible. So but they flew. And so that was the interesting part of it. And you can imagine once we get the AI in-flight service, like it's going to be pretty tremendous.
Yeah, we're right at the beginning. I totally agree. Yeah. Well, congratulations on those tricky Mid-Journey beach scenes, Dylan, and congratulations on Teapot Meets Potzilla. I can't wait to catch up with you in Vancouver. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We'll have to get a rice beer.
More about that joke on Twitter one day.
We'll have to unpack that one day. Great talking to you, Ian.